When you speak clearly, you earn respect not just from friends but from rivals and critics as well. Clarity is power. It shows that you know what you stand for, what you want, and what you will never accept. In diplomacy, in business, in leadership, too many people hide behind complicated language, endless meetings, and excuses that go nowhere. But a nation that wants respect on the world stage cannot afford confusion. It cannot afford to be vague. When India delivered its bold response, it didn't waste time crafting pretty phrases for the global media. It didn't issue cautious statements designed to avoid offending anyone. It made sure there was no misunderstanding about its intentions. That is why the world took notice. That is why even powerful allies were shocked. They are used to India taking the patient path, issuing polite diplomatic warnings and stepping back. They didn't expect directness, decisiveness, or public action that couldn't be ignored. It's the same in any relationship, personal, professional, or between nations. When you are vague, people question your intentions. They think you're hiding something or that you're too weak to say what you really mean. They test your limits because they're not sure where your limits are. They probe for weaknesses because you haven't defined your strength. Clarity removes that doubt. It closes the door on games. That's what India did. It defined its red line. It showed there was a cost to crossing it, and the message went far beyond Pakistan. Other nations watched carefully. They understood that India had set new rules for how it would deal with provocation. Even America, which has its own interests and its own view of South Asia, was forced to pay attention. They realized India wouldn't wait for anyone's approval to defend its people, and let's be honest, the world respects results. It doesn't respect empty talk. India's clarity wasn't just in words, it was in action. It didn't issue threats it wasn't prepared to carry out. It didn't promise retaliation someday in the future while doing nothing now. It acted swiftly and publicly. That forced even critics to acknowledge the shift. Clarity also matters for us at home. When a nation is clear with its own people, it builds trust. Citizens feel safer when their government speaks plainly about what it is doing and why. They don't want endless theories or half-truths. They want to know, are we secure? Are we prepared? Do our leaders have the courage to do what is necessary? When India responded boldly, it wasn't just sending a message abroad. It was telling every Indian, we see the threat. We take it seriously, and we will not let fear define us. Of course, clarity comes with risk. When you are clear about your intentions, you remove room for negotiation or ambiguity. You make it obvious where you stand, which can make enemies nervous or angry. But that is the price of leadership. Nations that want to be taken seriously cannot afford to be everyone's friend all the time. You have to choose what you will defend. You have to choose what matters enough to draw a line in the sand. And clarity is not the same as aggression for its own sake. It is not about reckless insults or needless escalation. It is about making your position so clear that there is no misunderstanding. It is about preventing conflict by removing uncertainty. When rivals know exactly how you will respond, they think twice before provoking you. When allies know exactly what you want, they can plan with you more effectively. Clarity removes guesswork from diplomacy. It turns vague hopes for peace into something more stable and predictable. In our history, there were times when we didn't have this clarity. We wanted to keep everyone happy. We wanted to avoid offending powerful countries. We wanted to believe that polite diplomacy alone would stop terror. But that approach failed us. It cost us lives. It encouraged those who thought India wouldn't respond. That era is over. This response proved it. It drew a new map of how we will deal with threats. We should not apologize for that. We should not water down the lesson for anyone's comfort. We should make sure the world understands that our patience has limits, and those limits are now known. This is how a country earns respect that lasts, not by shouting, not by threatening endlessly without follow-through, but by being clear and consistent in words and actions alike. If we want to keep that respect, we must hold to that clarity in everything we do, in our military strategy, in our diplomatic engagements, in our economic policies, in our vision for the future. Because clarity doesn't just scare our enemies, it inspires our people. It tells every citizen that they live in a nation that knows what it wants, that can defend what it loves, and that is prepared to speak with one voice when it matters most. This is how a country grows from being seen as a regional player to being recognized as a true power. Not by trying to please everyone, but by being unafraid to say exactly what it stands for, by being so clear in its purpose that even those who disagree with us cannot ignore or dismiss us. When a crisis comes, most people see only the danger. They freeze. They worry about losing what they have. They try to avoid blame, but real leadership is about seeing something different. It's about seeing the opportunity that crisis brings. It's about recognizing that the moment everyone else fears can become the moment you transform yourself. This is not easy. It requires courage to think differently when everyone else is panicking. It demands discipline to plan while others are complaining. And above all, it takes vision to see beyond the immediate pain to the long-term gain. India's bold response was not just a military action. It was a choice to turn a crisis into an opportunity to change the way the world sees us. For too long, our enemies relied on the belief that India would always be reactive, cautious, even hesitant to offend others. They gambled on the idea that we would prioritize diplomatic niceties over security. When we acted swiftly, we shattered that old perception. That was the opportunity hidden in the crisis, the chance to reset expectations, to make everyone reconsider how they deal with us. The world pays attention to results. When they see a country that refuses to be a victim, that answers threats decisively, they adjust their own strategies. Allies see a stronger partner worth investing in. Rivals understand that provocation has consequences. Even neutral countries learn to take your interests seriously in negotiations. This is why turning crisis into opportunity is not about seeking conflict, but about using the challenge to build credibility, deterrence, and respect. At home, too, the crisis was an opportunity. For decades, public debate in India was filled with frustration about our responses to security threats. People lost faith that their government would act when it mattered most. This response gave the country something more than a short-term military victory. It gave people a renewed sense of confidence in their institutions. It reminded us that we are not helpless, that we are capable of decisive, unified action when the stakes are high. This change in national mood, this boost in self-belief, is perhaps even more valuable than any tactical success, because a country that believes in itself can achieve far more than one that doubts its own resolve. Turning crisis into opportunity is also about learning. It is not enough to celebrate a bold response and move on. We must study what worked and what didn't. We must improve our intelligence, our technology, our coordination. We must make sure that the lessons of this crisis are embedded in our institutions so that we are even better prepared next time. This mindset of continuous improvement is what separates great nations from those that keep repeating their mistakes. We should also use this opportunity to strengthen our alliances. When other countries see that India can and will defend itself, they know they are dealing with a serious power. They respect us more. This respect can be turned into stronger partnerships, economic, strategic, technological. But only if we keep demonstrating that we can handle our own security without waiting for someone else's permission. The world wants reliable partners, not dependents. This crisis gave us the chance to prove that we are ready to be that partner. At the same time, the crisis taught us about the importance of unity. When India acted decisively, there was a rare moment of national consensus. Political differences faded, at least for a while, in the face of a common threat. That unity is an opportunity we should not waste. We should work to make sure that our debates remain vigorous but responsible, that we don't undermine national security for short-term political gain. The crisis reminded us that we are stronger together than when we are divided by petty arguments, and let's not forget that opportunity also lies in shaping the narrative. After our response, the world media ran headlines about India's boldness. That coverage matters. It changes how investors see us. It influences how young Indians think about their country. It even forces hostile actors to reconsider their propaganda. But to keep this advantage, we must keep telling our story clearly, confidently, without apology. We must own our actions and explain them to the world in our own words, not let others define them for us. Finally, turning crisis into opportunity is about planning for the future, not just reacting to the past. This response should not be the end of our efforts. It should be the beginning of a broader strategy to secure our borders, modernize our forces, strengthen our intelligence, and prepare for new kinds of threats. It should be the spark that leads to reforms in defense production, procurement, and training. It should inspire us to invest more in technology so that we never face a moment unprepared again. Because the truth is, there will always be new crises, new provocations, new tests of our resolve. The question is not whether we can avoid them forever. It is whether we will be ready to turn each one into an opportunity to become stronger, safer, and more respected. That is the mindset we need, not fear, not passivity, but readiness to see the opening in every challenge. If we can do that, if we can make this more than a single moment of boldness, then this crisis will not just be remembered for the fear it caused or the pain it inflicted, but for the new India it helped build. An India that is unafraid, unapologetic, and unstoppable. Most people are taught to follow the rules, to do things the way they have always been done, to avoid making others uncomfortable. But progress doesn't come from repeating what everyone expects. Real change happens when you challenge conventional thinking, when you dare to question the assumptions that hold you back, when you say, "Why should we do it this way just because it's always been done this way?" That mindset is at the heart of bold leadership, whether in business, in life, or in the defense of a nation. For too long, India approached security and diplomacy with the same old script. We would be polite, cautious, endlessly patient. Even when we were attacked, Our first instinct was to issue condemnations and appeals for dialogue. We were so afraid of being seen as aggressive that we forgot the danger of appearing weak. We wanted to please powerful nations who told us to show restraint, even when our own citizens demanded justice. We worried about how we would look rather than what we needed to do. That was the conventional thinking, and it failed us. Our rivals understood this. They counted on it. They built their strategy around it. They knew they could provoke us in small ways, test our limits, wear down our patience, because we would always take the diplomatic path. They believed we would never change, that we would never cross certain lines, and for years they were right. That is what made our recent bold response so important. It broke the pattern, it shocked them, it forced them to question every assumption they had about India's limits. Challenging conventional thinking doesn't mean being reckless. It doesn't mean picking fights for the sake of ego. It means refusing to be predictable. It means keeping your adversaries guessing. It means refusing to let old habits define your future. When India struck back, it wasn't just a military move. It was a strategic message. We are not bound by your expectations anymore. We will choose our own response on our own terms. This mindset is not just about defense. It is about how we think as a country in every domain. For decades, many in India accepted the idea that we had to choose between security and growth, that investing in defense meant sacrificing development, that being strong militarily would scare off investors or partners. But this crisis proved the opposite. The world respects strength, investors want stability, partners want a country that can defend itself. By challenging the idea that security and prosperity are opposites, we open the door to a new vision of growth with confidence. We must also challenge the idea that only certain nations are allowed to act boldly while others must ask permission. For years, there was an unspoken rule in global diplomacy that some countries could strike at will, and others had to explain themselves endlessly. India's response broke that rule. It said, "Our sovereignty is not negotiable. Our security is not up for debate. We do not need anyone's approval to protect our people." That is the kind of mindset shift that changes a nation's place in the world. But challenging conventional thinking isn't just about foreign policy. It is about how we prepare ourselves. We need to question outdated military doctrines, slow procurement processes, bureaucratic red tape that slows our forces down. We need to ask hard questions about why certain decisions take so long, why some capabilities are missing, why we are dependent on others for critical technologies. Instead of accepting excuses, we need to demand solutions. We also have to change how we talk about security to our own people. For too long, strategic discussions in India were left to a small circle of experts. Ordinary citizens didn't know or care much about defense planning. This must change. Security is everyone's business. We need to educate, inform, and involve the public in understanding why readiness matters. When the people understand, they will support the tough choices needed to strengthen the nation. And let's be clear, challenging conventional thinking doesn't mean rejecting all traditions or alliances. It means re-examining them. It means asking whether they still serve our interests. It means negotiating harder when needed, investing in new partners, diversifying our options so that no single country or bloc can dictate terms to us. It means being bold enough to say no when necessary and wise enough to say yes when it benefits us. This approach will make some people uncomfortable. Some will accuse us of being too aggressive, too ambitious, too demanding. Let them. The truth is, no country that ever achieved greatness did so by playing it safe all the time. No nation that earned real respect did so by being predictable and submissive. Respect is earned by being willing to think for yourself, speak for yourself, and act for yourself. So let us reject the idea that India must always be the quiet, patient, endlessly tolerant power. Let us reject the notion that we cannot afford to take risks, or that we must wait for permission before defending ourselves. Let us embrace the responsibility to choose our own path, set our own standards, and surprise those who think they know how we will behave. Because the world is changing, threats are evolving, opportunities are emerging, and only those willing to challenge the old ways of thinking will be ready for what comes next. India has shown that it can do this. Now we must make it our habit, our culture, our promise to ourselves, to never again be trapped by old assumptions, but to keep questioning, keep learning, and keep growing stronger. That is how we honor those who came before us. That is how we secure the future for those yet to come. When a nation acts boldly, it cannot just think about today. It has to think about the future it wants to build. It has to inspire confidence not only in the people who govern it, but in every citizen who calls it home. Confidence is not a vague emotion. It is a fuel that drives progress. It is the belief that what we do today will make tomorrow better, safer, stronger. Without that belief, no amount of weapons or strategies will save us. Without that belief, no policy will last. That is why true leadership in times of crisis is not just about reacting. It is about showing a vision that people can believe in and work toward. India's bold response was not just about humiliating an adversary or shocking the world. It was about telling our own people we will not be helpless. We will not accept fear as our destiny. We will defend ourselves with courage and clarity. This message was vital. For too long, many Indians felt that we were always reacting to events, that we were at the mercy of other nations' opinions, that we could be threatened without consequence. By acting decisively, our leaders offered a vision of an India that is in control of its own security. An India that doesn't wait for approval to do what is right, but that moment cannot be allowed to fade as just a one-time show of strength. We have to turn it into a lasting vision. A vision that says we will build the capacity to defend ourselves against all threats, not just today's. A vision that includes modernizing our forces, investing in technology, developing homegrown industries that reduce our dependence on others. Because true security is not built in a single strike. It is built in sustained preparation. When people see that vision clearly, they do not just feel proud in the moment. They begin to trust in the future. They begin to support the difficult reforms that defense and security demand. They understand why budgets must be spent, why training must be rigorous, why alliances must be carefully chosen. A leader's job is to make people see the connection between today's sacrifices and tomorrow's safety. Between today's planning and tomorrow's peace. This is also about dignity. A country that cannot defend itself with confidence cannot negotiate with dignity. It will always be forced to compromise on its values, to accept the terms others set. But when you show the world that you can and will stand up for yourself, you change the dynamic of every conversation. Other nations treat you as a partner, not a subordinate. They realize they must take your concerns seriously. That is why inspiring confidence through vision is not only about military matters, it is about our entire place in the world. We must also inspire confidence in our allies and partners. When they see us willing to defend our interests, they know we will be a reliable friend, that we will not abandon commitments out of fear, that we will not collapse under pressure. This builds stronger partnerships, whether in trade, technology, or security cooperation. Countries want partners who know what they want, who have a plan for getting it, and who will stand firm when tested. But perhaps most importantly, we must inspire confidence in the next generation. Young Indians watching this moment should not only feel patriotic pride, they should see a model of what it means to lead. They should learn that leadership is not about making everyone happy, but about making the tough choices that keep people safe. They should learn that vision is not about empty slogans, but about real action backed by courage. When they see their country respond boldly, they learn to think boldly themselves. That confidence can change everything about our future. It can drive innovation because people who believe in their country's strength are willing to take risks. It can build social unity because people who trust in their nation's leadership are less vulnerable to division. It can even strengthen our democracy because citizens who feel secure and hopeful are more engaged and responsible. But for this confidence to last, vision must be sustained. We cannot make one bold move and then return to old habits. We cannot let bureaucratic inertia slow us down. We cannot allow fear of criticism to paralyze us. We need a clear plan for the future, one that is shared openly with the people, so they can hold their leaders accountable. One that aligns defense, diplomacy, economy, and society toward the single goal of a secure, respected, and prosperous India. We must also be honest about the challenges ahead. Inspiring confidence is not about pretending everything is easy. It is about acknowledging the risks and saying, "We will face them together. We will not run. We will prepare. We will learn, we will improve, and no matter what, we will not be intimidated." This is the promise we must make to ourselves. That we will build an India where no citizen feels afraid of threats from beyond our borders. An India where no adversary doubts our willingness to act. An India where our friends know they can rely on us. And an India where our children know they can dream without limits because their country will keep them safe. Such a vision requires leaders with courage, citizens with trust, and institutions that work. But if we commit to it, there is no reason India cannot be that nation. A nation defined not by fear of what others might do to us, but by confidence in what we can do for ourselves. That is the true meaning of a bold response, not just for one day, but for every day that follows. Ramaises are easy. Speeches can make people cheer for a moment, but what truly matters in the end are results. That is how a country earns respect from its own citizens, from its friends, and even from its rivals. You can say whatever you want about intentions, about values, about strategy, but if you cannot deliver, the world will stop listening. This is why, after all the statements and warnings, India's bold response mattered so much. It was about doing what needed to be done, not just saying it. It was about showing that our words have weight because they are backed by action. For years, there was a pattern our adversaries counted on. They would provoke us. We would condemn them in strong words. We would hold meetings. We would wait. Sometimes there would be international pressure. Sometimes there would be calls for restraint. And often, that would be the end of it. Our people would be told that diplomatic solutions take time. Our enemies would learn that time was always on their side. That cycle didn't just fail to deter attacks. It encouraged them. They knew there would be no real consequences. But this time was different. This time India chose results over words. It chose to show that our patience has limits, that our warnings are not empty, that when we say we will defend our people, we mean it. This is what changed everything. Because results speak a language everyone understands, our rivals understood it immediately. They were forced to admit that their old calculations no longer worked. They had to rethink their strategy. They had to recognize that India was willing to take risks to defend its interests. And it wasn't just our adversaries who noticed. Allies and partners around the world watched carefully. Many of them were surprised. Some were even shocked. But all of them understood one thing. India could no longer be taken for granted. They saw that we would not always wait for permission, that we would act in our own interest when needed. This changes how they treat us in negotiations, in security cooperation, in trade deals. Because no one wants a partner who is all talk and no action. They want a partner who can deliver. Most importantly, our own people noticed. For too long, there was a sense of frustration. A belief that our leaders were too slow, too cautious, too willing to let us be bullied. When India struck back decisively, it restored something vital, public faith. Citizens felt that their government was finally matching their expectations, that their anger and grief were not ignored, that their safety was not negotiable. This restoration of trust is one of the most important results of all. Because a country is strongest when its people believe in it. But results don't just come from one bold move. They require preparation, planning, discipline. India didn't respond impulsively. It gathered intelligence, coordinated agencies, calculated the risks, chose the right moment. That is why it worked. That is why it was credible. And this is the real lesson for the future. We cannot rely on slogans or anger alone. We need the ability to act at any time, to deliver results not just once, but every time we are challenged. That means investing in our military, improving our intelligence, building self-reliance in critical technologies, and making our decision-making processes faster and more flexible. Results also mean facing hard truths. We must ask whether our systems are ready for the next challenge, whether our forces have what they need, whether our alliances are strong enough, whether our people are informed and resilient. It is not enough to celebrate one success and move on. We must institutionalize the ability to deliver results again and again, because our adversaries will adapt. They will test us in new ways. We must be ready. This mindset of valuing results over words must spread beyond defense. It must shape our diplomacy, our economy, our governance. Too often, countries make promises to their people or to the world that they cannot keep. They say they will create jobs, ensure safety, deliver growth, but fail to follow through. When that happens, trust erodes. But when a country consistently delivers on its promises, it becomes a magnet for investment, for talent, for partnerships. People want to be part of success. It is also about holding ourselves accountable. When leaders promise action, the people must demand results. When plans are announced, there must be timelines, metrics, evaluations. This culture of accountability ensures that we don't become complacent, that we don't settle for the comfort of empty words, that we keep pushing ourselves to do better. In the end, results are what shape history. They decide whether our children will remember us as the generation that spoke boldly but did nothing, or as the generation that secured their future. They decide whether the world will see us as just another large country with ambitions, or as a great power with the capability to match them. That is why India's bold response matters so much. Not because it sounded good on the news, but because it delivered. It changed the equation, it forced the world to take us seriously, and it reminded us of what we are capable of when we choose action over hesitation. If we can keep this spirit alive, if we can make results our standard in everything we do, there is no limit to what India can achieve. A country that delivers is a country that leads. A country that acts is a country that shapes its own destiny. And that is the future we must choose, not one of endless talk, but of meaningful, lasting results.